Hey, it's JJ and welcome to Ask the Health Expert. But this isn't just any old Ask the Health Expert session. This is your bonus session. Yes, it's the weekend, and because it's the weekend, we are going to take some time with an amazing expert. So be on the lookout for these Saturday Ask the Health Expert bonus sessions where we're going to go deep into an amazing subject with an incredible expert to give you actionable items that you can put into your life. Hey, JJ here, and in today's show, we're going to be talking about pain and specifically a new way to address pain. Now, if you've been taking pain pills, pain medications, you're concerned about the effects they might be having on your body, or you're just in chronic pain and looking for other solutions, I've got someone amazing for you today, because I'm always looking for different approaches, and especially in the area of pain, where when you are in any kind of pain, you know how it impacts every area of your life. But also, a lot of the different medications that you take for pain have crazy side effects that you just don't want to do. One of them being that a lot of the pain medications can lead to leaky gut. And then leaky gut leads to food intolerances, and food intolerances lead to more pain. Like, how unfair is that? So today I have Nicole Sachs, who's a speaker, writer, podcaster, and psychotherapist who's dedicated her work and her practice to the treatment of chronic pain. She wrote The Meaning of Truth and has the Freedom from Chronic Pain podcast, YouTube channel, and website. And she has literally helped thousands of people around the world with a completely different approach to pain. She's helped them heal themselves and basically cure themselves with no medication or surgery. Sound enticing? I bet it does. And what's super cool is she's also got the first module of her course, her Freedom from Chronic Pain course, that you're going to get for free by going to jjvirgin.com/listen. Now, before we dive into today's show, I want to do a shout out to Cap1289 from the USA, who said, talk about how to stay pumped. 5 stars she gave the show and says, I love this show hands down. So thank you so much for that. I super appreciate it. We love those reviews. They are literally everything to us. They tell us how well we're doing. So love that. And I want to share one more thing I love with you, and then we'll be diving in. Nicole Sachs, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you with us.
So glad to be here.
So, big topic that we are tackling today, because one of the biggest reasons people go see their doctors is because of pain. And so I love this idea that you can give people freedom from chronic pain. This is like super cool. So we're going to be digging into that. But before we go there, I always like to find out how you got to this place. So I know you're going to have a very, very different approach to pain than what we've talked about in the past. How did you, what is your hero's journey here? How did you get into all of this?
Yeah, well, it's a very personal journey that I love sharing because I love being the example, like a walking around science experiment, the example of how this works and how I've carried it to other people. When I was 19 years old, I was diagnosed with a severe condition of the spine called spondylolisthesis. I had the degenerative variety, so I was told it would get worse as I got older. And I was basically given, kind of a living death sentence as a 19-year-old, which is no sports, no travel, no riding in the car for more than an hour because of the bouncy motion of the car. And the likelihood that I would have biological children was very slim because my spine was degenerating.
Wow. So back up, all of a sudden you got this diagnosis at 19. What was going on?
I was a freshman in college. I was pledging a sorority. I was out on my own for the first time in my life. And I was just getting by, freshman year.
All of a sudden your back started hurting, or what happened?
I actually, if I really look back, and a lot of people say this to me when they do the work that I do, if I look back, I had back problems even as a young child, 10, 11 years old, my back would ache. And then, of course, sometimes I would get stomach aches and sometimes I would get anxiety. So I always had like little tinges of it. But my freshman year, my back went out. So the people would understand it as I was on the floor, I was in tears. And I actually had to be physically removed from college. My parents had to come up and help me and drive me home. And that is how I began my journey, which is I went to all the doctors. I had an MRI, I had x-rays. I was on opioid pain medications. I was on steroids. So I mean, I had what they call an acute pain incident.
Got it. Okay. So then what happened?
So then I got this diagnosis, and I still want to say that even now, if an orthopedic surgeon sees my MRI, they go pale. Apparently, I have a very malformed spine at the base of my spine, but I don't walk differently. I don't stand differently. It's just internal. And so basically, I started on my life of living in fear. I lived very carefully. I didn't travel much. I was never able to lift a suitcase. I went on with my life because they did suggest that I would need spinal fusion surgery, but they said I could probably live to 40 without it if I didn't go into manual labor. So I just basically, I lived in fear. I lived small. I lived carefully. And it went on like that until I was in graduate school and I came across the work of Dr. John Sarno. And he at the time was an attending physician at the Rusk Center for Rehabilitation at NYU Medical Center. And he taught that, there was a mind-body connection. And the first book I actually read of his was called Healing Back Pain, but soon after I read The Mind-Body Prescription, which to me is the best one he wrote. And I understood that even though we all have what he called normal abnormalities, which is my spine is misshapen. I do have spondylolisthesis for sure. I still have that diagnosis. It doesn't account for our pain, which is why back surgery and other structural surgeries have such a low success rate at reducing pain. And so I started on this journey of understanding that the mind and the body are so connected. And the reason they're connected is because everything works through our brain and our nervous system. And that's what's required to send pain signals. And so if our emotional processes are leading to pain signals being fired, that actually means that an emotional exercise can cure a physical condition. And so that's kind of where it started for me.
So you read his work, and then what happened? You put it into your own practice, I would assume.
Right. So I wasn't actually at the time done with graduate school. So I wasn't a licensed therapist yet, but I was very...
No, I mean your own self. Like, forget the other people. Like, I mean, what makes this so amazing, I always feel that practitioners have a big leg up when whatever they're teaching, they've had that own experience, because, there's nothing that you can trade for that. So here you were, you read his work. How did you incorporate that into your own life, and what happened?
So basically what I came to understand through reading his work and through doing, really good research on my own was that we live in a mind-body system. And sometimes we feel things in our hearts and sometimes we feel things in our bodies, and they're literally interchangeable. And what is interesting is that most people who I speak to understand that this is true. If I speak to a lecture hall of people, I'll say, raise your hand if you ever had a stressful day and you got a headache. Every hand goes up. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten bad news and you immediately felt sick to your stomach. Every hand goes up. So basically, I start explaining to people that what I'm teaching them is something they already believe. And so if we can understand that our minds and our bodies are that connected, and every time we have an emotional reaction that we feel in our body, if you have that enough, and if your nervous system remains in chronic fight or flight instead of rest and repair where we want it, you can get into a chronic condition like migraines, like fibromyalgia, and like my back pain. And so I set upon a path of doing the work to allow my repressed emotions to rise. And I was just astonished at how my back pain started going away. And this is what Dr. Sarno says will happen, but it's so remarkable to have it happen in your own body. And so as I was developing my own practice, I started understanding new ways to explain it to other people. And by now, in this part of my journey, I was already a licensed therapist. I actually started working with Dr. Sarno at NYU, and he started referring into my practice. So now I'm practicing with other people, and I'm helping them understand a concept that I call JournalSpeak, which is when you are able to fully reckon with the truths that live within you, which, we can get more into it. And I can certainly explain this more, eloquently in terms of the details. When you're able to get to that basic truth and your body is no longer fighting to repress it or to divert you with the pain from what you really need to feel, the nervous system and the brain literally stop firing these pain signals. The syndromes fail to be syndromes.
Well, yeah, let's dig into that because that's huge. How do you know what these things are?
So essentially, as a therapist, so when I was doing private practice for all the years working with people, I understood that people are often willing to tell the truth, but then they want to touch into it really quickly and then they want to jump out of it, and that is a protective mechanism from the nervous system. And I need to say, JJ, I want to make sure to say this because I sometimes hear myself talk and I say, I hope people aren't going to dismiss this out of turn in terms of like, how could an emotional exercise cure a physical condition? I do want to state that this is actually brain science. This is not that you're going to do an emotional exercise and feel better about something and so you're not going to feel pain. This is literally that as a society, we are the same as we are, men and women, the same as early man. When we're in fight or flight, we only have a few parts of our systems that are working properly for us. And so many systems shut down when you're in sustained fight or flight, like digestion and circulation and things that you obviously need to feel well. And so one thing that happens when you go through these truths is your nervous system literally stops being in fight or flight. So that's what causes the cessation of pain. Just needed to say that so people aren't confused.
Okay.
But in any case, the process that I discovered in myself, I called JournalSpeak. And essentially because one of the things Dr. Sarno recommended that you do is that you journal. And so, people have been journaling for the ages, and obviously journaling can make you feel like you understand a situation better or you feel better. But I understood very early on in my journey, that kind of journaling, just like gentle telling of my day, that wasn't going to be the stuff that heals. I was going to need to get raw. Because I just had an intuition, something deep in me that knew that just, kind of gently touching on the subjects of my life wasn't going to be what is releasing my nervous system from the sustained fight or flight. And so what I teach people to do is to make 3 lists, daily life, childhood, and personality. And so those 3 lists are just bulleted lists that you kind of brainstorm the things that come up that you may have conflict about or you may have unresolved issues about. And the daily life stuff is just what we all deal with, right? Love, money, kids, work, moving, whatever it is that we have to deal with is daily life. And then personality, most people who experience any sort of chronic conditions, and that includes anxiety. Chronic anxiety is something that I treat very successfully. They have the personalities that tend to inform those kind of things, like perfectionism. You want to be liked by everyone. You want everyone to be okay, so you're okay. You want to be seen as a good person. Society really fuels these personality characteristics in us and makes us feel like that's the way we need to be, a lot of shoulds. And so people with these personalities, which is almost all of us to some extent, and then unresolved stuff from childhood, which is always informing daily life, we make a bulleted list of those 3 things, and then I teach them how to journal speak it out, which is essentially letting that 5-year-old kid inside of you, who is still running the show in so many ways, have his or her voice without a filter and without anyone ever needing to see it. So JournalSpeak is a practice. It's not anything you're going to keep. Just like I say, if you want 6-pack abs, right, you're going to go to a trainer and you're going to get a regimen of what you're going to do for your 6-pack abs. If you do it every day for a long enough period of time, you'll get the abs. JournalSpeak is like that. It's just an exercise. You don't need to keep it. You don't need to share it. You destroy it right when it's done, or erase it, if you're doing it on a computer. And the exercise itself, as it informs the nervous system and the brain slowly but surely, the pain signals stop firing. And if you think this is too crazy to be true, I'm telling you, use your body as a science experiment learn about the work and do it, it's astonishing the way it works.
So how quickly, because I'm listening to this, and my questions are, how do you really identify? Because I think for a lot of people that have just kind of stuffed things and repressed things, they might not even remember some of the things from childhood that keep showing up for them, or they might not be aware of a part of their personality that's creating the issues, or even stuff going on in daily life. How do you uncover these things if you've kind of shoved them? I always used to laugh. This was my perfect technique. It worked really well. You're going to laugh at this. So the way I used to handle all the crappy things that happened is I always said, I just have this closet and I put them in the closet and I shut the door. Which of course does not work, by the way. Bad technique. Horrid, So until you open the closet and smothers you. So how do you know? Because for a lot of this stuff, I would imagine it's like peeling an onion where you think, okay, like I've handled all those things. And then you go, oh, and then that happened.
Yes. Okay. So that's a great question. What I would like people to understand if they're going to do this work is sometimes you just have to do left foot, right foot, breathe. It's about being in the process and signing up for the journey. So there's 3 facets of my work: believe, do the work, and patience and kindness for yourself. And if you set your intention, so let's say you have chronic migraines, okay? And so and you've tried all the medical stuff and you don't want to get on the drugs and whatever the case. And you say, okay, I'm going to do, Nicole's work for mind body medicine. I'm going to do this. So your intention is, I'm fine. My nervous system is in inflamed fight or flight. I am not able to heal myself through just reasoning with it. I need to uncover what I need to uncover in order for my brain to stop sending these pain signals. Okay, all right. I believe that. I'm going to go with that. And even if you don't believe it, just suspend your disbelief, just go on the ride. And then you're going to start doing the work. And a lot of people I know do not remember everything from childhood, and you don't need to, because what happens when you open yourself up to the work, and I do believe the work has a spiritual aspect, like, the connectedness of all people and the universe and the energy, just opening yourself up to healing, the things that you need will rise. And I have seen this happen. I've been in private practice for over 15 years, dealing with the most extreme cases you can imagine, people in wheelchairs that are now running marathons. No joke. Really extreme, crazy recovery stories, people who are on disability for years and years that are now back to work full time. I have one case of a girl who had traveled the world, including South Africa, getting experimental treatments on her head, for her facial and head pain, that did this work, and 6 months later was back in veterinary school full time, and she's now doing an emergency residency at Penn. So these are these amazing stories, and they all came from people from all walks of life that don't necessarily remember everything and don't necessarily know, every single problem that ever happened to them. But it's what rises is what's important, because when you start partnering with yourself, you start realizing that things are not as complicated as you realize. A lot of people are triggered daily, let's say, by injustice. I know I'm very triggered by injustice. If I feel like
I have a son like this. One of my sons, we've gotten him through it, but he had this whole thing around life isn't fair. I'm like, okay, that's the story, and everyone had to be fair and no one could cut in line. I'm like, honey,
And that's a really extreme way to look at it. But if you are if you're triggered by it, let's just say he's triggered by it, something happened at some point that made him feel like life wasn't fair, right? And maybe it's his birth order, and maybe it's the way the kids treated him in 3rd grade. This is not necessarily about fixing a problem or changing. We can't change our past. We can't change what happened. This is simply about informing your very protective brain and nervous system that the predator, if we're in fight or flight, that means a predator is pursuing us. The predator of repressed emotion is not dangerous, because if your nervous system needs to choose between what hurts or what hurts worse, and let's say, just in our imaginary example, the person who is very upset about injustice was treated very unjustly in elementary school. He was bullied. Well, then there's still a part of him that's still reacting to that. And there's still a part of his brain and nervous system that feels that that is so painful to feel that he can't feel it. He needs to get a backache or a headache or a stomach issue or a skin disorder or, however it's manifesting in his body. If that person can journal speak and understand, even if he doesn't remember the players and the details, how it felt to feel left out or how it felt to feel marginalized, then maybe he doesn't have to go 10 rounds about, a marginalized person that he met today that, it's not fair for that person. Because that is what happens, that we're triggered on in our daily lives constantly by unresolved stuff that we're still living through.
Makes so much sense. Now, how quickly can someone start to turn this around? And then is it an ongoing process, or once you've gone through it, you're like, cool? What happens there?
I think that this can be turned. The initial resolution of pain is often abrupt, meaning people who have been suffering for a very long while can do this work, and they'll have like it's sort of like a moment where they can't believe that they go like an hour without the pain they usually had. Oftentimes there's a pretty quick situation where they understand that this is going to help them. It's almost like a little nod from your nervous system, like, okay, all right, we're calming down. We have new information, and we're going to check it out. But I think it's very important not to rely on that and not to stop doing the work, because this is built up with, however many years we've been repressing things that we need to sort of patiently, that's the third part of the work, is patience and kindness for yourself. Patiently and kindly work through these issues. But what I will say is people who operate in belief, who do the work regularly, as I suggest, which is a 20-minute a day journal speak practice followed by 10 minutes of any kind of loving kindness meditation you choose, guided or unguided, people who do this work get progressively better. And the last little bit of healing usually has to do with releasing the fear of the pain, like releasing the fear that it's coming back for you. But there's so many resources out there. I have so many resources. Like there's so many ways to continue keeping positive on the journey. And eventually the chronic pain just fades.
Got it. So I look at this and I think, well, why wouldn't this become a first, like we talk about first line therapy in medicine, and it's like you look at it and go, well, why wouldn't this just be first? Why isn't this out there more? I'd heard of John Sarno's work, and he is just amazing, but it's like the best kept secret.
Well, I mean, if we're going to speak frankly, JJ.
Yes, let's speak frankly.
Let's do that. It's about money. Listen,
we have an opioid epidemic, and why wouldn't we be working with people first on this? It's crazy.
Well, it is crazy. And I'm going to tell you that, I'll be 47 years old next week. And my goal is, before I leave this planet and transfer into anything else I'm going to be, I'm going to make a difference in this. I believe that this is the first line, beyond. But the problem is, and I'm not an anti-medical person. I'm not I'm just reasonable, that there are certain medications that are necessary and there are certain surgeries that are necessary. But the amount of medication we take as a society and the amount of unnecessary surgery is catastrophic. And the reason that it is being perpetuated is because this work doesn't make money for big pharma or for insurance companies, or, it's really personal work. And that's why everybody listening today, anybody who is hearing our voices, please know that the change for this kind of thing does not happen from the top down. This needs to happen in each one of us. Each one of us has to decide, I'm done suffering. I no longer want to suffer. I am ready to try something new, because trying something new is the only way I'm going to change my life. And that's where it has to begin. And I believe this change will be very dramatic, but I think it's going to come from the bottom up, because each person is going to need to decide for him or herself that they are ready for a new life.
Well, it's actually a good time in the zeitgeist because of all this stuff going on and people becoming aware that there's got to be a better solution. So I super appreciate you being out there driving this out into the world. And I also love the fact that you're going to give everybody the first lesson of your course so they can get started right away. I mean, you've given us some tools to start working with, but now you have no excuse. This is like, to me, it's like free. It's easy to do. If you have any kind of pain going on, like I can't see any reason not to get started doing this. So I'm going to give everyone the link as to this course. You can get this at jjvirgin.com/listen. And I'll also put the link to your book as well. So you can grab that there. Again, it's jjvirgin.com/listen. And that will take you to the link to be able to get started with Nicole's work. And this is just crazy. I'd love to end with one more really cool success story just to show people what's possible.
All right.
Okay. I know. It's always hard when you say one.
I know. Let me think. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the story of, her name is Mouse, and that's a nickname, but it's the name she goes by. I think it's because when she was a little girl, she was very much younger than the rest of her siblings, and she used to hide in the corner when they had their boyfriends and girlfriends over, and they would be like, "There's a little mouse in the corner," so she became Mouse. So Mouse, she was referred into my practice from a doctor that I work with at Northwestern in Chicago. And she had just attended her son's wedding in a wheelchair. She had severe, I think that her technical diagnosis was plantar fasciitis, which a lot of people do experience, very severe pain of the feet. And I think she also had pain in her legs. And it was so bad that I think she was in her early 60s, had been an incredibly athletic, very well woman. And she had this, the problem was so bad, she hobbled down the aisle, but the rest of the wedding she had spent in a wheelchair. And so we started working together, and she was, very, very polite, very good girl, right? She had always done as she was told. She's from Minnesota. She had she'd been married to her husband for over 40 years. And she had 3 beautiful, amazing, successful children. She had the whole package. And I remember telling her, well, Mouse, when you do JournalSpeak, you're going to have to really let it loose. You might have to swear. You might have to use the F word in your writing. And she was like, oh, really? Oh, I don't know. It was adorable. And she was obviously very repressed. So basically, we went, I'm not going to share obviously the personal issues in her life, but we went through her life. We talked, she had an abusive, alcoholic father and a mother who was chronically ill herself, and a lot of other issues that were going on. And little by little, she started to understand that she had just made herself very small, ironically, like a mouse, in order to let everybody else have the stage. And the inner child inside was screaming for attention. And what she realized in her feet is that she was not going to be permitted to just go on and walk on until something was changed. She was being stopped in her tracks by her own brain and nervous system saying, no, life is too short, and you are living without enough joy and without enough presence for the fact that you're important too. And we did this work together. She was a warrior with JournalSpeak. She did her JournalSpeak every day. She meditated. And it was only maybe, I don't like to ever put a timeline on it because I never want people to be frustrated because everybody's journey is their own. But I believe it was a few months before it started getting significantly better. I don't remember exactly, but I know a year later when she was looking back at her son's wedding picture, she was playing 18 holes of golf on a regular basis. She was back to her long walks with her husband at night. She's absolutely, completely chronic pain free today. I actually interviewed her on my podcast a few weeks back, and so people can check it out if they look at my podcast. But she's an absolute success story, and she is ordinary in my practice. That's what people need to realize. This sounds like it's awesome success story. All her pictures at her son's wedding were in a wheelchair, and now she's playing 18 holes of golf. This is normal. people have this transformation all the time, because if you think about it logically, if your nervous system is in fight or flight and everything's shutting down and all these pain signals are being fired because it's protecting you from your repressed emotions, when the emotions rise, there's nothing to protect you from anymore. And so it makes sense that these are like cataclysmic shifts in people's wellness.
And I would imagine, I'm going to take it one step further, is I would imagine it shows up in every area of your life. So this is a huge thing because it's going to help with pain. But when you start to resolve these things, everything gets better. So it's a huge thing you're doing. And I like the framework that you've just put out. I'm going to talk more about that framework after the break, because I'm going to go give everyone some action steps. So I want to remind everyone, go to jjvirgin.com/listen. You can get started with the first module in the course, and stay with me, because after the break, I'm going to share my top action step from today so you can put it into immediate action. I'll be back. Welcome back. So I want to share some key takeaways. This is kind of my debrief time. And as you can tell, I'm rustling papers because I was taking notes while Nicole was talking. And I really loved the way that she talked about JournalSpeak, because I'm a big journal gal. I love to journal my goals. I use journaling in all of our breakthrough carbon tolerance and breakthrough food intolerance and detox and fast fitness programs, because it is such a great success metric. But I love the idea of journaling about your daily life, about your childhood, and about your personality, and really doing the work and going through those to identify those pain points that could be creating the pain issues for you. So I just wanted to give you those 3 areas again to incorporate into your journaling, and then to think of it in terms of JournalSpeak, where it's really that safe place where you can just get it all out. And I had a friend who always used to say it's better out than in. So again, that was the 3 areas: daily life, childhood, and personality. And then she gave kind of 3 key concepts to remember as you're going through this. Number 1, believe. Number 2, do the work. And number 3, have patience and kindness for yourself. And, I look at those and I think we just got to put that into everything we do in every part of our life. So I just love that. Wanted to do a big share on that. I also want to remind you that we have great show notes from this with that link to the Getting Started on our course for free, first module. And you can get that at jjvirgin.com/listen. And then want to remind you, if you haven't subscribed yet, please remember to, so that you don't miss any of this goodness. And while you're over there, leave a review, because I'd love to shout you out. All right. See you next time.